Okay, we're going to
quick.
switch a little bit here.
Switch a little bit to trade.
Talk about trade and international economics.
Keep it
It's
short.
been a controversial topic, as you might have noticed over the past 2 years.
15 minutes.
And basically, my thesis, just to get it out there, is that trade's got a bum rap. That trade is really extremely important for our prosperity. It is important for the world's prosperity. And that in the same way that we've built alliances since World War II, we actually built a system where increasingly people abide by a set of rules that is pretty fair trade, not perfect, but it's gotten better over time. And what that has allowed everybody to do is become a bit wealthier. The United States has gained tremendously over the past 50 years in the trade that we have undertaken. 85% of the world's consumers are still outside of the United States. So if we want to keep making money and doing things, our companies have to be able to compete effectively overseas. We've gone through and are still going through a tremendous transformation of the economy in the United States, but also in other manufacturing countries. And in all of those, they've lost manufacturing jobs. That's not because of trade, it's because largely of new technology and changes in the manufacturing process. But what that didn't help here when people lost their jobs is what other job could they get? And my thesis, and you can ask me about it later, is that the failure has been a public policy failure by both Republican and Democrat administrations. Both administrations did not really foresee this transformation and help create the ways for people to adapt to that. But let me just take the example of Nafta and Mexico, since we're here in Texas. NAFTA supports 14 million U.S. jobs. It supports 5 million, the trade with Mexico supports 5 million jobs. When NAFTA started, there were 700,000 U.S. jobs supported by trade with Mexico. So that number of jobs tied to our trade with Mexico has grown by 7 times. As I honestly say to people, well, it's then hard to argue that we lost more jobs than we created if we now have more jobs tied to that. What happened was we lost a certain category and type of job. That's true. But we created a lot of other jobs. And these jobs weren't in the same skill level. They were often service jobs. They paid better. They were doing different things. And the less skilled jobs did move to Mexico. That's true. But overall, you all benefited, because you pay $1,000 to $2,000 less for a car because part of it is assembled in Mexico. The other important thing to remember is that on average, 40% of anything manufactured in Mexico that comes back to the United States is really U.S. product, because we have built our private sector, not the government, the private sector has built an integrated production platform. So these guys have already heard this example, but I'm going to use it again. So a Honda CR-V, a Japanese car, put together in Jalisco, which is where the city of Guadalajara is in Mexico, 70% of that car is from the United States or Canada. Mexico gets 30% of the value of that car by putting it together. When it comes back into the United States, it looks like 100% of a Mexican-produced car, but it's not. And so when you hear that we have a giant trade deficit from Mexico, it really doesn't tell you what's happening in the trade. That equivalent figure from China of U.S. value added and China exports on average is 4%. So between 4% and the average of 40% from Mexico is a big difference. And the difference is we build things together now across North America. Now for Texas, that is really important because you all have the most trade of anybody with Mexico. The trade between Mexico and Texas is larger than the trade that the United States has with Germany, all of the United States. Germany is our 5th largest trading partner in the world, but you all here in Mexico trade more than that. I mean, in Texas, trade more than that with Mexico. So it's a really important relationship. And it's not just about any one product. You trade everything from computers and electronics to beef, to natural gas, to gasoline. You guys refine much of Mexico's crude oil and you send it back to Mexico as part of this integrated production. And if we do away with that, out of the 1 million or so jobs in Texas that depend on trade with Mexico, it's estimated that you would lose 150,000 to 300,000 of those jobs. And I guess I have to stop.
No, you don't.
You don't.
But,
You got a couple more minutes.
No, you've got more minutes.
No.
But in any case, trade really touches your lives more than you would think. In fact, the relationship with Mexico touches the lives of more Americans each day than any other relationship in the world. And the next one is the relationship with Canada, with our 2 neighbors. And a lot of that is trading back and forth. But not only, across that border, every day in the south in Texas, there are 490,000 border crossings. All but a little teeny bit of those are legal, are good, are producing our regular jobs that are going on. And those Mexicans that come here to Texas spend about $4 billion a year when they're staying here and when they're visiting your communities and buying things and doing this. So this is a really tight relationship. Now we need to update Nafta, no question about that. NAFTA was negotiated in the early 1990s. It didn't include all the stuff we do on the internet, all the software we now make. All of that needs to be integrated into a new modern NAFTA. Plus, we learned from trading with a lot of places around the world. All that needs to be put in there. But if we don't get this updated, it is creating that famous uncertainty that you heard about with our allies. It's creating that for your business people, your farmers, and American workers. Because you build a business by planning on having access to markets, by being able to sell things, you invest for a long-term relationship. Even if you have one sale here, another sale there, often you're selling year after year after year in the same pattern. So it's really important. And just to get back to what we were doing before, so diplomats help this happen. They help American companies around the world. Big part of what we did in Mexico was helping U.S. companies, helping them build partnerships, helping them invest. When the negotiations were going on for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which we were in at that time, we were helping to find solutions with Mexico and others, and diplomats do that regularly around the world, and I'd be happy to talk about trade and other things in other parts of the world. We have a completely different relationship, for example, with Europe. So we can explore that, and we'll look forward to taking your Q's and A's.